Good evening and welcome to the 2018 ASUA Presidential Debate, a partnership between the Associated Students of the University of Arizona and the Arizona Student Media. My name is Marlon Freeman and I serve as the ASUA Elections Commissioner.
Good evening, my name is Emily Hastings and I serve as the ASUA Deputy Elections Commissioner. Before we start the program, I want to acknowledge the support and assistance of the staff of Student Governance and Programs, the Dean of Students Office, reporters and the staff of the Daily Wildcat, and UATV3, the Student Union Memorial Center, and the dedication of our entire ASUA Elections Commission made up completely of student volunteers. And I would also like to introduce tonight's debate panelists. They are Kendal Washington White, Assistant Dean of Students for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management and Dean of Students, Sherard Robbins, Assistant Dean of Students for Equity and Student Engagement, Matt Lubisich, current ASUA President, Brian Goldstein, Executive Director of ZonaZoo, Eddie Celaya, Daily Wildcat News Editor, and Marlon Freeman, ASUA Elections Commissioner.
Tonight's debate will follow these specific rules. Each candidate will initially have 5 minutes to introduce themselves and speak about their platforms. Please give applause after both candidates have discussed their platforms. After that portion, our panelists will begin their questioning. When a question is directed to both candidates, we'll be alternating who speaks first. The first candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer the question. The second candidate will have 1 minute to rebuttal the statement. Then our initial speaking candidate will have 30 seconds to reply. If a candidate is asked a question that pertains to them only, for example, a platform question, then they will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to reply. I will be asking questions on behalf of the UA Cultural and Resource Centers.
Before we introduce the candidates, we want to remind the audience that in the theater to please keep audience applause and noise to a strict minimum during the debate to ensure the candidates' voices are heard both in the theater and on the online video. We also ask that you silence all your cell phones. However, we invite you now to welcome the two candidates for ASUA Student Body President to the stage, Nadalyn Masters and Anna Woolridge.
Cool, awesome, thank you. We flipped the coin before this, and Nadalyn Masters will go first.
Hello, can you hear me? Does it sound good? Okay, I can't tell. Hello, everyone. I hope y'all are having a very nice Sunday evening. My name is Nadalyn Masters. I'm a junior here studying sociology and law, and I'm running to be your next student body president. I've been a part of ASUA for 3 years now, each in a different area of the office. I started out as a Senate aide, started my sophomore year working in programs and services under the AVP Tatum Hammond, and then this year I work in the President's Cabinet as the Diversity Director. These 3 years in ASUA have given me a lot of insight to how the organization works and also have opened my eyes to ways that it can be better. So from my experience in those areas, as well as my involvement in residence life, the Honors College, and a variety of different areas on campus, I've developed 3 major areas of my platforms. The first area is diversity. Like I had mentioned earlier, I am the Diversity Director for Student Government right now. And we have had a year of working very hard to address many issues happening on campus that affect marginalized identities. I started out my freshman year as an ACT member in Res Life, working on social justice, and have been continuing that work. And this year, a part of my platform is kind of to expand on those ideas that I've had, to work on the list of demands released 2 years prior by the marginalized students of the University of Arizona, as well as working on campus-wide programming, such as a World Cultural Day that really highlights and exemplifies the diversity that we have on campus through our organizations and clubs here. So those are my 2 areas as far as diversity goes. My second platform is around Title IX. I currently work in the Office of Institutional Equity. I've been working there for about a year now, and they do Title IX training for faculty and staff. And from working in that office, I've kind of seen, and I am also on the I Will Planning Committee for Sexual Assault Awareness Week that's going to happen in April. But from working in these 2 areas, I've kind of seen that there's a lack of collaboration and a lack of communication between different areas as far as Title IX goes. So the second part of my platform is to develop a campus-wide, organized and intensive effort to tackle sexual assault and rape culture on campus. And then lastly is student engagement. From my involvement with ASUA, I've met a lot of students who, their freshman year, they come here, eyes wide open, ready to get involved, and they hear that we have over 600 clubs on campus, but then they don't know how do they reach those clubs, how do they get involved, and I don't want them to miss that great opportunity to get involved here on campus. So that's a three-pronged approach for that area. The first area is to update our ASUA and club website to make sure it's easy and streamlined and easy for students to access what they need. The second part of that is to have a social media platform. So students are already on their phones anyway, so it's an easy way for students to get connected and get involved if they have questions, and making sure our social media presence is active and engaging with students to streamline that communication. And then lastly is to attack students right when they get on campus, when they first step on campus, to fill out, and when they get through orientation, to be connected with organizations and clubs which are a part of their interests and are easy for them to get involved. That way, right when they step on campus, they have the contact information and descriptions of clubs that they would enjoy to be a part of. So those three areas are things that I'm really, really passionate about, and areas that I really think that are needed improvement that can have a major impact on the university overall. And those are three things that I plan to do if elected student body president. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And just because the mics are really low, I would just suggest picking it up and holding it close to your mouth.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Then our next candidate, Anna Woolridge.
Hello, everyone. So first of all, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here, and a special thanks to all our panelists. I really do appreciate your time and concern here. So my name is Anna Woolridge. I am a junior. I'm studying MIS, and I'm obviously running to be your next student body president. So I have had the honor and the privilege to be in ASUA for the last 3 years. I started out in freshman class council, where I got to shadow the administrative vice president, and that's where I really fell in love with ASUA. I got to learn all of the ropes. And I really enjoyed seeing such a diverse amount of programs working together towards a common goal to make students more successful here at the university. So from there, after my shadowing experience, I decided to run for Senate. And I've been lucky enough to be in the Senate for the last 2 years. This year I'm serving as president of the Senate. And I think the most enriching experience I had as a senator was being a part of the Advocates program. So we got to go up to the Arizona Capitol, talk to state legislatures about tuition and fees and how those are affecting different students. And that's where I really realized in full capacity the job of a student government. And I got to understand that the job of a student government is to speak on behalf of all students, but also be informed while speaking on behalf of those students. And also helping students realize that they have real power here in this university. So every single day, students are coming to class, coming to school. They're discovering new things, they're learning new things, they're making their voices heard, they're making different choices, and there's power in all of that. So I believe that specifically the job of a student body president is to understand the pulse of the campus and understand where those students are coming from, whether it's from the cultural centers, from Greek life, whether it's from different organizations, different walks of life, different areas of the country or even the world. It's our job to unite all those voices. So like I said, students do incredible work here at the university, and I believe that it is ASUA's job to provide those students with equity and resources that they deserve to be the most successful that they can be here at this university. And as student body president, I want to effectively work with administration to ensure that this happens. And I also want to facilitate transparency and facilitate inclusive conversations with students across campus on issues that all students are concerned with. And with that being said, I also want to not be the voice of all students, but I want to give students the opportunity to voice their concerns. So, thank you.
Thank you. And then, so we will start with our questions, and our question will begin with our Dean of Students, Kendal Washington White, and then we'll go down the line.
All right, thank you. So this first question is for you, Natalie. Much of the work of the ASUA president is utilizing your platform to inform and influence university leadership, as well as ABOR. So if you could share your previous experiences with using your influence, information, and knowledge to make substantial change or a meaningful accomplishment on campus.
Oh, thank you, Kendal. I think the first part of that is believing in the vision and believing in what the platforms are going to do. And I think the second part of that is when you're talking with administration, talking with ABOR, it's one thing to just tell a story, but another one to have the numbers behind it and making sure they have the information that's going to sway their decision. And I think my experience with that has been my involvement with the cultural centers on campus and being part of different initiatives to kind of push those changes on campus. I think the biggest one for that has been the Black Living Learning community. When they were displaced within the stadium dorm and having to rile the students and getting together, talking to administration and getting that meeting with people from administration as well as Dr. Robbins to kind of get that ball moving has been my experience, is that I'm not afraid to have that tough fight and have that tough conversation when it comes to standing up for what students need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Thanks. Excuse me. So this is for both of you. And so we don't pay enough attention to how the environment can disable us. How has this manifested itself in your experiences? And then what would you do as president to either raise awareness of the environment and how it can disable individuals, and maybe what you would do to sort of counteract that and work towards progressing there?
And Anna will answer first.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your question. I think that can be kind of interpreted both ways. I think it can be interpreted as the physical environment, where if students with physical disabilities are not having buildings and classrooms that are accessible and that accommodate their needs, and that can really alienate students. And unfortunately, we do have some of that deferred maintenance around campus, and I think that calls for more funding, that calls for more attention to the DRC, and that calls for more advocacy on their behalf. And then the other end of that question, I think the environment of acceptance can also very much disable students in their success here. So if they're not feeling like they're accepted, whether it's by a faculty member or by a classmate, then they can obviously not want to be here anymore, or want to leave, or not want to contribute to this university to their fullest. So something that we need to do is also put more attention on inclusivity and making sure that students know where each other are coming from, and that education piece is there. So thank you.
Thank you. And now Natalie.
I think the first part to answering that question is, if we're talking about the environment altogether, we're at an institution, so there's a lot of systematic things that are going on here at the university that can impede and put up barriers and obstacles for students to really feel a part of the Wildcat family. And I think the first part to addressing that is acknowledging that those things exist here. And before you can even start to try to make those systematic changes comes from acknowledging it. And I think that's the issue that a lot of, at least in my experience, we run into, is that we're afraid to have that tough conversation and afraid to kind of talk about what big changes can we make to try to address those environments? Because we often always talk about the happy student that's been here forever and shouts bear down every time you see them, but we often forget that there's a lot of students here that do not feel welcome. And I think as student body president, it's being able to understand that those people exist and we're not going to let their voices be pushed to the side, and bringing those conversations up when we meet with administration and meeting with Dean of Students, meeting with these two different organizations to talk about how we can tactically address these issues to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible.
And Anna, you have a chance to reply if you would like for 30 seconds. You can say now.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Okay, cool. Our next question.
This question is for both of you. Your platforms both touch on ASUA outreach. Considering the turnout of the general election, which was about 7% of the student population, How do you plan to encourage students to participate in the campus political climate?
Madeline will answer first.
I think the first part of getting them to participate in the election is knowing that ASUA exists in the first place. That's kind of been an issue that I've seen since I've stepped on campus, because I've been in ASUA all 3 years, and I'm like, hey, ASUA is dope, you guys should join it. They're like, what is that? ASU? And I'm like, no. But I think the first part of that is developing a plan, and that comes on the ASUA's part as far as outreach goes. That the second students come on campus, they know what ASUA is. They are automatically subscribed to our listserv, that they get that information. Whether they get the email or not, like whether they open it or not, they have that information at their fingertips. And that's a part of one of my platforms for updating the website to make sure that if students want to seek out that information, they can, as well as us bringing that information to them. So we're meeting each other halfway.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, so with such a low election turnout, voter turnout, we definitely have a problem with apathy here on this campus. And I think it stems from not only not knowing what ASUA is, but also not knowing that what ASUA does affects every single student. So a lot of students don't know that we as ASUA are talking to administrators, we're going to the state legislature, we're making decisions on these students' behalfs, and they are either not knowledgeable about it or don't care or don't understand or have the tools and accessibility to get involved. And I think that starts with us being transparent and also us going to other organizations on campus, because we as ASUA, as the student government, can't really expect organizations like cultural centers and even Greek life and different clubs to come to us. We need to go to them, go to where they are and talk to these students and really educate them on how to get involved, make their voice heard.
Thank you. And Madeline, you have a chance to reply if you choose to.
Yeah, I think I would just add on to it. I think both me and Anna are hitting it on the head. But a second part of that is being recognizable. So as ASUA, not just the exec team, but members of ASUA attending events, making sure students on campus know our face, and that way they're familiarized with what our organization is.
Thank you. And our next question.
So this is kind of more for Anna, but yeah, Madeline, you can answer as well. So part of the revenue generated from the $100 student athletic fee imposed on incoming freshmen and what will be sophomore class goes to the ZonaZoo budget. When it comes to ZonaZoo, are you more interested in making the zoo full from a physical number standpoint, like actual bodies in the stadium, or are you more set on making the individual experience for each student as unique as it can be?
Okay. Yeah, so I think those go hand in hand, kind of. So I think if you do fill the stadium, I think that enhances the experience. But also, as you were touching on the $100 athletic fee, that's a huge financial burden on students, and not everyone is able to financially bear that burden. So I think lowering the price would make it more accessible for students and also make the experience more enjoyable, because we shouldn't be asked to pay upwards of $200 to partake in the Wildcat spirit and the Wildcat tradition.
Thank you. And Madeline.
Yeah, I think going off of that, it goes a part of looking at what that money is going to, and they do go hand in hand. So if a student is attending the games and it's not packed, they're not even filling up to that Wildcat experience with the stands being full and being able to shout and be a part of that crowd. So I think the question you have to ask is, how do we fill those stands? And so if the cost of a ticket is far too high, then that's an issue we need to tackle as student government and as ZonaZoo and as administration in general, to make sure that students of all backgrounds can attend, and not just of our undergraduate population, because we do have grad students who want to make sure that they feel welcome to attend those games as well.
Thank you. And you have a chance to reply, Anna, if you choose to.
Yeah, so I think just kind of touching on like the numbers aspect of this, we've seen a very large decrease in the amount of ZonaZoo passes sold since that $100 athletic fee. So I think this does beg for both a reduction of the price and an enhancement of the experience. So I think the two of those go hand in hand. If you do one, the other will happen.
Thank you. And our next question.
Hello. This question is for both of you. So as you may know, there is still no legislative solution for DACA recipients across the country. It's important that the student body president actively pursues initiatives to support our DACA students here on campus. What platforms or objective do you think are critical to supporting these students?
Madeline will answer first.
I think when it comes to DACA, it's talking with the students. because they know the experience of what it's like to be on campus and being a DACA student and what that experience is like on our campus. But then the second part of that is as an ASUA president, being knowledgeable about what DACA is and what that looks like for students, so that when you go into meetings with administration, you can adequately talk about and represent those student voices. And I think that's also part of doing your research and looking at other universities and what have other schools done and how we can implement that on our campus.
Thanks. And Anna.
Yeah, I think it's important for someone in the role of student body president to know that we have around 50 DACA students that we are serving here at the University of Arizona, but that might seem like a small number, but as this is a growing issue that will progress, we have more coming from high schools. We have more at Pima Community College and community colleges around us that might very well bring students to the U of A. So that's something that's necessary to recognize, and it's also also necessary to communicate with that population. And something that we've discussed within the Senate is making like a fundraising event so that we're able to raise those private funds for those students to support them, not only the 50 that are already here, but those that are coming in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Natalie, you have 30 seconds if you choose to reply.
I think my only reply would be that in addition to the funds and making sure that they stay and can continue their education, that we're thinking about the issues that they may face outside of the classroom and making sure that their mental health is taken care of and that they truly feel welcome here on campus.
Thank you. And our next question will be from our Cultural and Resource Centers. And the first question is, we currently have Tucson community members and the UA Native student leaders working to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day at the university. As ASUA leaders, what are actionable steps that can be taken to support these students and their efforts? And Anna will go first.
I think a lot of that is the education piece. So a lot of people don't really know how the tribes work and that we are on Native land and that we are receiving funding for that, and also that how the family of Native American tribes work. And it's important to have that education and understand why the title of Columbus Day is insulting. And that's necessary for the student body president to know so that when they are having those conversations with administration, they can help facilitate that and help meet their goals as students.
Thank you. And Natalie?
I think the biggest statement that the university can make is releasing a statement and acknowledging the fact that we're not going to celebrate Columbus Day here on our university campus. And then that also goes in part of administration and ASUA supporting the programs that Native American Student Affairs puts on during Indigenous Peoples Day and making sure that these are events that students can go to, learn, educate themselves, and be allies on this fight to go against Columbus Day.
Thank you. And Anna, you have 30 seconds to reply if you choose to.
Yeah, I think visibility is definitely really important, and actively educating the campus community on this issue. And not only that, but also releasing a statement, but following up with that statement and doing things to make sure that that is met.
Thank you. And then our next question.
All right, as the leader of a department and a small division, I really understand the importance of building a good team. And so this question is for both of you. The ASUA president requires a tremendous dedication of time representing students at a variety of shared governance meetings, one-on-ones with me. I see Matt everywhere, every week, and he's working quite a bit. And I'm wondering, and I know that I believe in having a strong team. You can't do it all by yourself as a student body president. And so can you tell me how you plan to appoint your team and the characteristics that you're looking for in those individuals that you are surrounded by?
Thank you. And Natalie will go first.
Yeah. I think as someone who's been on both sides of the table for interviewing, I think the biggest thing that I look for is drive and passion. For whatever areas in my cabinet, I want someone who truly believes in what they're doing, because if they have a passion for their work, they're going to do it to the best of their ability. But I also want someone who challenges me, because the only way I'm going to be the best student body president is for people to be asking me questions and pushing me further. So what I look for if I am hiring to fill my cabinet are people who want and truly believe that they can make this university a better place and leave ASUA better than when they got their first position. I look for people who are organized, who have a vision. When we hire for my honor society, we always ask them a personality question, because I want to be someone that I can get along with, but someone who, they don't have to be my best friend, but we know that we can work together to accomplish a common goal.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, so like you were saying, I think if you come into a role as big as this, trying to be a one-man show, you're going to fail and you're going to burn out really quickly. So something that's key to assembling a team is definitely making sure that it's individuals that are willing to be part of a team, but also individuals that are willing to take lead, take initiative, and work together as a cohesive unit, even if we don't agree at all times, and I would hope we don't. I would hope we have different countering opinions and ideas, and that open dialogue as we're working on issues as important as the issues that ASUA deals with.
Thank you. And Madeline, you have 30 seconds to reply if you choose to.
I do not have a reply.
Okay. And then our next question.
So, excuse me. I think about my time as an undergrad, and I was a transfer student personally when I sort of finished out. And so my question revolves around that, and this will be for both of you. What role does ASUA play in sort of fomenting a culture for transfer students, and how would you as president ensure that sort of inclusion on campus?
And Anna will go first.
I think as it stands currently, transfer students feel kind of unwelcome, kind of like outsiders, like they're jumping into something in the middle of it. And we definitely want to avoid that with the Transfer Student Center. And I think that starts with our transfer student welcome. So when we're welcoming them, we really need to be not only hospitable, but knowledgeable and honest with them. And they need to receive the same information that our incoming freshmen are receiving. And so that goes along the lines of what to do around campus, what to eat. We should not assume that they know anything more than a freshman, and that we're really giving them that helping hand, not only in the beginning, but fostering that throughout their time here.
Thank you. And Madeline?
It's interesting that you brought that up. So for the ASUA Diversity Board, one of the things we wanted to do is reach outside the typical cultural centers that we usually reach out to. So currently the Transfer Student Center sits on our board, and one of the best things that has been eye-opening for me is getting to talk with them and hear their experiences, because it is a unique experience as far as a transfer student goes, and they face unique challenges that traditional students do not face. So I think a part of making sure that they're welcome and having that experience is that they have that platform to voice their opinions and make sure that their experiences are being heard. One of the things we've run into is they do not feel that, well, their admissions packets are different than the traditional students, but making sure that as they come into campus that they're integrated, they find out about ASUA, and that all these same opportunities are open to them as well.
Thank you. And you may reply if you choose to.
I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question.
So this, again, is for both of you. Both of your platforms call for addressing diversity or multicultural awareness in some different forms, one or another. What do you say to students and to other members of the U of A community who may find the sort of training you've proposed or some of the events you've proposed that might go against their own beliefs or worldviews?
And Madeline will answer first.
I'm going to quote Sherard here. When he did diversity training for our RAs, and he says at the very beginning that I want you to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah, did I get it right? Yeah. And I think that's starting that conversation. So coming and inviting people to come in with an open mind. You don't have to leave believing everything that is told to you in the trainings, but you have to come in with an open mind and kind of be willing to challenge yourself in the way that you see the world. And I think it's inviting people to have that conversation and having that open space, that we're not here to shun you or tell you that your views are wrong, but just kind of let's take a step back and let's talk about it in a bigger picture and just start that communication.
Thank you. And Anna?
Can you repeat your question one more time? I just want to make sure I'm answering it. Thank you.
So, yeah, it focuses on what do you say to students and to other members of the U of A community who may find the sort of multicultural and diversity training proposed in your platforms that might go against their worldview or beliefs? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that does have a lot to do with comfortability. So I think if you've never been in a situation where you're the only one in the room that looks the way you do, I think you have a hard time understanding students that go through that every single day. And I think it's really important to have empathy and put one another in each other's shoes and really try to look within and ask yourself how you would feel. And that's basically what the training is. And just trying to understand others. It's not trying to project any beliefs, but just promoting that understanding so that we can facilitate a more inclusive environment.
And Madeline, you may reply.
I have no reply.
Awesome. And our next question.
So kind of still going on the idea of like culture representation. So there have been some issues over the years where students were treated differently in the zoo because they did not fit like the classical 18 to 22 age demographic. So we launched our We Are ZonaZoo kind of campaign in an effort to kind of combat the negative perception of these older students. So how would you help rebrand the ZonaZoo to ensure that all students feel equal being a part of the ZonaZoo at any athletic venue?
Thanks. And Anna will go first.
Yeah, so I think not really like a rebranding, but kind of like maybe the start of a tradition is to have interactive activities in the ZonaZoo, so that we get people talking to one another that usually wouldn't talk to each other. So do a cheer with like the person next to you, I don't know. But just kind of like getting everyone talking, kind of breaking that ice and making everyone feel welcome and feel like they're included in one activity, one thing, because they were at the same game and they're cheering for the same team.
Thank you. And Madeline?
I think that'd be, I'll take it out. Gotta make sure you can hear me. I think that starts with marketing. I think that starts with the way ZonaZoo, the flyers, the pictures, and making sure that the people in those pictures are of a diverse and unique identities. So that way when students see them, they see themselves in those advertisements and feel welcome at the zoo. But I think the second part of that is kind of going off what Anna said, and programming and putting on events and making sure that we're reaching out to the graduate students, we're reaching out to the transfer students, we're reaching out to these different communities personally and making sure that they are invited and they are welcome, and doing events to kick them off and bring them into the zoo because it's awesome.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply.
Yeah, I think kind of going off of doing activities, you could also really employ your individuals in ZonaZoo crew to bring someone to a game that normally wouldn't go to a game, like give out a free game raffle to, for example, the Transfer Student Center or something like that, so that we're really encouraging those communities to be involved and we're bringing them to the first game and having them meet people, and then hopefully they'll bring more people in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question.
So as student body president, you play a key role in tuition and fees discussions. So you are, in this scenario, you're getting pressure from admin to raise tuition, and you know this is not in the best interest of the student body and incoming students and prospective students. So how are you able to effectively communicate your position while not jeopardizing your ability to sit at the table?
Madeline will go first.
I think that's a part of being well prepared. Obviously, you're walking in with those tuition negotiations. It's an uphill battle. And it's making sure that you have that communication with administration, you have people on your side, and you have that network that when you go into that meeting, you're not the only one at the table that feels that way. And I think that goes into making sure that you stand firm on your beliefs, because you are student body president, you're here for the students, and making sure that regardless of how ABOR may feel, that you're here as the student voice, and that's the voice that you're going to keep. And making sure you hold strong and steady and bringing students in to help feed that voice.
Thank you. And Anna.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we're in the midst of right now, actually, and I have been lucky enough to be able to sit in on these meetings, and I think that the key to that is being extremely respectful, but also being honest, and really employing student stories that you've talked to, and really going out and talking to those students that this will be affecting primarily. So talking to those different groups, even asking if they can come to the meetings and give their 2 cents, and just really being a unified voice as ASUA, that we're putting our foot down against higher costs that are not accessible for all students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Madeline, you can reply.
No reply.
Okay. Thank you. And the next question is, what do you think about inclusion and diversity in experiential learning programs like study abroad and alternative spring break? What do you hope to do to impact marginalized populations participating in experiential learning programs like these? And Anna will go first.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but can you repeat it one more
Yeah,
time?
no, you're
I'm
good.
sorry.
It's a lot of words that I'm troubling saying. No, it's fine. So there's sort of two questions here, and I'll like pause in between. So what do you think about inclusion and diversity in experiential learning programs like study abroad and alternative spring break? What do you hope to do to impact marginalized populations participating in experiential learning programs like these?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time, obviously study abroad is expensive, and a lot of the time that's not accessible to a lot of students who are low income, low socioeconomic status. And so in order to really get that diversity, able to experience this experiential learning, we need to provide the cultural centers with the employees that they need in order to advise them on how to get scholarships. We need to provide scholarships for these types of excursions, and we also need to be going to these students that don't normally think that study abroad is an option for them.
Thank you. And Natalie?
I think, so for study abroad, I think it's a valuable asset that gives the student experience, especially in college, because a lot of students will not have that opportunity to travel once they graduate. So I think it's making sure that that opportunity is available to all students on campus. Anna touched on it with scholarships, but making sure that as ASUA that we're promoting it and that we are streamlining that process. We ourselves are offering scholarships, and we're looking at how we can make that trip more affordable. I know Dr. Carter's abroad to spring break, he has it listed as a class fee so that regular scholarships can be used to attach to it instead of just study abroad scholarships. So looking at different ways like that to make sure that it's as affordable as possible to send students on these life-changing experiences.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply.
I don't have one.
Okay, awesome. And our next question.
All right. So I've been here at the U of A for 25 years with some experience at other institutions. And my question is a diversity and inclusion question. You know, in my mind, diversity, inclusion, and universal design, which has not been mentioned yet today, is less about how many programs or accommodations we provide and more about thinking proactively regarding inclusive decision-making when hiring or appointing people to opportunities, thinking about access to programs and services at the beginning of a process versus an afterthought, which is often what happens. How do you envision this concept within your leadership team and within ASUA-sponsored programs and services and recognized clubs and organizations?
Thank you. And Natalie.
I think as ASUA as a whole, that comes as part of our training when we get hired and looking at the ASUA retreat that we go to, that our members, when they are looking at programming, when Webb's looking at putting on an event, that these are things that are actively in their mind before they start the process. I know as RAs, we always have to check which boxes our events are going to touch on and make sure they are educational and that we're thinking about all aspects of the event before we even begin the planning. So I want to implement that as far as ASUA goes. On a broader scale, I think that is getting in touch with the students. So it's really hard to know from the outside, especially if you're not someone that holds the identities that are being marginalized, to know what that would feel like or what those barriers look like for those students. So it's having that active role and an active communication to make sure that you're informed and that they know you have an active communication line with them so that they can inform you best about how this program, initiative would impact them. And I think one of the ways ASUA is doing that right now is through our ASUA Diversity Board. We're looking to partner to that with administration so that way on big ticket items such as cultural competency that we're looking to roll out, that students are being brought in on those conversations to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible before it's even implemented.
Thank you. And Anna?
I don't know if there's a repeat the question limit, but can you repeat the question? I'm really sorry, I'm probably reaching it.
So essentially my question is about, it's not really about how many programs and accommodations we do, but it's more about being proactive on the front end when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and universal design. So as president of the ASUA, how would you manage that in a proactive way with your appointments, with your programs and services that are offered through ASUA?
Okay, Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think that it's important to have kind of like a protocol of how we go about things, making sure it's accessible to people of different diets, different abilities, different cultures, and all those things. And that's something that we need to touch on, as Madeline was saying, at ASUA retreat in the beginning of the year, so that it's always on our mind. We always know that when we make an event, when we're doing some kind of an initiative, we need to meet these certain requirements and be proactive about thinking about what kind of students we're reaching out to at this event and what we're intending for the outcome to be. So thank you.
Thank you. And if you choose to reply.
Oh, no reply.
Okay. And our next question.
Right. So again, thinking about my own undergraduate experience, I would say I came from a very small school where the president of the university would be an RA. So she was very tangible. And so I guess my question for you all is, in lieu of getting tasks, what can you do specifically as ASUA president to foster a commitment to inclusion, to community, and to make voices of the marginalized students here a priority? Again, without delegating tasks to somebody else, what can you specifically do to make sure this is something we can focus on?
Thank you. Anna will go first.
So I think it starts with really opening up that dialogue. And like I said before in a previous question, not asking things like the cultural centers to come to us as ASUA, but really going to them, going to their events, recognizing what they're trying to do and why they're really trying to do it, and getting to know the individual students and the faculty that work in those cultural centers, and being able to facilitate a good relationship, because by having a good relationship, you can really accomplish a lot. So.
Thank you. And Natalie.
I think part of self-education. To better represent the students on campus, I have to be knowledgeable of what those students go through, and educating myself on adequate training so that way I can best represent them. And then I think the second part of Anna touched on, being, like you said, your president. So having time within the outside of the cultural centers, because not all of the marginalized identities, to making sure on is talking about different events and making sure that students know who you are part of tasks, but as a student, ASUA are also holding themselves to that same standard.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply.
Yeah, so kind of adding on, I think it's important to recognize that as ASUA leaders, it shouldn't just be the president going out. It should be people from other branches of ASUA, and it should be not something that we are fearful of being uncomfortable. We should not expect the education to be provided to us, but actively go out and seek it, and go out and get to know those students.
Thank you. Next question.
For Natalie, however, you can go ahead and jump in on this as well. You include working on the list of demands issued a few years ago on behalf of the marginalized students. What will your advocacy look like at a program level? Will there be programs that you actually end up implementing or propose to implement?
I think the first part of that, I've been working on already as diversity director. So we implemented an ASUA diversity board, and the specific task of that board is to look at the list of demands, as well as looking at what programs that can we put on to help elevate cultures and marginalized identities on campus. So I think going through the list specifically, there's a lot of things that are at the admin level, but there's a lot of things that are at the ASUA level that we can either be an advocate and a voice for to help propel those students who wrote it up to the administration level and let them know that ASUA is on their side when it comes to these conversations. But then on the second part of that, things that are within ASUA's power, such as programming, reaching out to different the smaller changes, the easier changes that we can do at the ASUA level, making sure that we are the ones sending those emails and getting that information out and publicizing the list of demands. There's a lot of students on campus that don't even know that it exists.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply if you choose to.
I don't have a reply.
Okay. And our next question.
All right. So Matt was very involved with the ZonaZoo this year, from the stadium renovations to negotiating the ZonaZoo asking prices. How involved do you think you should be without overstepping the duties and responsibilities of the ZonaZoo Executive Director for next year?
And Anna will go first.
So I think that definitely starts with a conversation between the director and the president. But I think that when you have a program such as ZonaZoo under your cabinet, that you should be respectful of what they want to do, but also you should be that advocate for them. You, as student body president, you really do have the ear of the administration. So ZonaZoo should be able to utilize. And when talking to third parties, both ZonaZoo and the ASUA president should always be on the same page, and that entails a lot of communication and conversation about what the goals are and what we're really looking to do with the ZonaZoo.
Thank you. Madeline?
Yeah, I think it's a part of fostering that relationship. The ASUA president and the ZonaZoo director work together all year. So making sure that they are on the same page of what they want the zoo to look like and what those negotiations are going to look like in the room. So that way they're united front when it's tackling those big questions when it comes to prices and how we want the zoo to operate. But I think also part of that is ensuring that the ZonaZoo director has what they need to succeed. They are the ones that are the head of that position, but making sure that anything the ASUA president can provide to them to give them that platform is given.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply if you choose
I don't
to.
have a reply.
Okay, awesome. And our next question.
Hello. So the University of Arizona is currently undergoing a new strategic plan. So come May 1, you'll be thrust into the middle of a strategic planning process, which sounds very heavy, I know. Dr. Robbins has declared this plan bold and transformative. So student input is critical to making sure this new strategic plan is for sure student-centered. How will you advocate to administration and the president on making sure students are at the table? And can you give me 2 issue areas you think that this plan needs to address?
And Madeline will go first.
I think the first part of it, I know Dr. Robbins' strategic plan asks for focus groups with students. So ensuring, and this is kind of getting to Kendall's question that she asked earlier, that there's diverse students at that table, or else we're going to make the same mistake of making a strategic plan that is not all-inclusive, and then we're going to end up having to go back and change things, which is what we don't want to do. It's time and money and bad experiences that have to happen first. So I think that's getting diverse students at the table and making sure that they know that this is something that their voice is actually going to be a part of making huge structural changes to the university. As far as 2 areas, I think the biggest one is diversity. We always talk about, and it's in the list of demands, about hiring faculty and staff of color and professionals, staff of color, to make sure that we are an inclusive university and getting those retention rates of students or of faculty and staff of color is a huge initiative, and that's going to make an impact from the top down level. Because when you have students who can look into a classroom or go into an office on campus and see students who look and see faculty and staff that look like them, that's already an experience. So you're not only, it's a twofold, you're helping the students and you're helping the faculty and staff here feel welcome. And I think the second part of that is something that you've been working on is sustainability and making sure that these are at the forefront and making sure that we're thinking far into the future to make sure that we're in the best position as a university when it comes to sustainability and the environment.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, so the strategic plan should be something that all students have a voice in. So we should be recruiting from literally everywhere across campus in order to assemble a task force and focus groups that can effectively address this and represent the entire student body, not just a certain group that's more outspoken than maybe others. So we need to not just say, oh, sign up for this focus group, but really go to students and say, what are you thinking? What does the strategic plan mean to you? What should we be looking like in as a university in 5 years, in 10 years? And also, I think another angle that the strategic plan needs to really focus on is the student fee initiatives that are currently happening. So we have fee initiatives, for example, the Honors Village Rec Center, should be something that we are really thinking about what we're going to do with that, how that's going to affect all students, how we're going to implement big initiatives like that, and how it's going to affect our university and different communities, and how we can be inclusive in that.
Thank you. Madeline, if you just reply.
No reply.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And our next question is, what do you think is the most major obstacle in obtaining equity on our campus, and how would you address it? And Anna, go first.
I think the biggest obstacle to equity on our campus is lack of knowledge and privilege of those who do not have to go and seek that knowledge. So I think a lot of communities around campus don't necessarily understand one another, and therefore they either don't communicate, they don't communicate well, or they are not having good relationships. So I think if we were able to expand the knowledge facilitated by ASUA, we would be able to have a more inclusive campus.
Thank you. And Madeline?
I think the biggest issue with equity on campus comes from a university-wide buy-in for that equity. There's a lot of big changes, and these are these tough conversations that we want to have if we truly are aiming to be an equitable campus. And so I think the biggest obstacle is that some areas on campus are afraid to have that conversation, and we kind of get limited to having students having to organize and put that work on their backs versus the administration and the university as a whole, like wanting to take that up because it is in the best interest of all students here on campus.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply.
Yeah, I do think equity is something that is the responsibility of everyone on campus. So that includes all students, no matter what walk of life, includes all faculty, and it really does include all organizations, and it's something that we all take a responsibility in, and that we really need to come together and understand one another in.
Thank you. And our next question.
Thank you. What role will or should the student governance and programs professional staff play in your success and impact during your presidency for both candidates?
Thank you. And Madeline?
I think this touches on a part of my platforms. I'm all about collaboration and communication and teamwork. And I think if we're trying to get to that vision of having an equitable campus top down from the university, it's about having those conversations with faculty, staff, professional staff, and making sure that we're all like shooting towards the same vision. We all have a goal that we're reaching for. If we're trying to be the #1 land grant university, what does that take? What tasks do each area have to do in order to reach that common goal? So I think as far as my presidency, the best way to do that is through the collaboration. And so my first thing that I would do is start reaching out to them and building those relationships and making sure that we are all on the same page as far as what we want best for our university.
Thank you. And Anna?
We have some really knowledgeable advisors in ASUA, and I think as leaders, it can be hard sometimes to ask for second opinions, but I think that's absolutely necessary. Sometimes if you're a strong-willed person, you can just kind of say, oh yeah, like I can do it. The way I'm thinking will work, but these individuals have a lot of years of experience working in student governance, and it's important to consult their opinion and know that they are professionals and they will not try to overstep what you are trying to do, and they will help guide you in the direction that you're really desiring to choose, because they really do trust the students of ASUA to know the pulse of campus and what's best, and how the students are communicating to them what needs to be done.
Thank you.
No reply.
Okay, sorry, I had to ask it. And our next question.
Okay, so this has a little bit of a philosophical setup, but it'll get to the point in a second. So I guess my philosophical question would be, is one's primary focus and what they view as the biggest issue on campus the same thing? And if yes or if no, can you share with us what your primary focus is? And can you share with us what you believe is the biggest issue affecting students on campus?
Thank you. And Anna?
Okay, I'm hoping I'm understanding. But so I might have to have you repeat. I'm so sorry.
So can your primary as ASUA president be the same thing as what you focus as ASUA president? And could you also share with us what you believe is the biggest issue facing students today here?
Okay, so I think your primary focus of a presidency, I guess, is not necessarily the same as the biggest issue you see on campus. I think your focus can encompass a lot of different issues, if that makes sense. So I think for me, my biggest focus would be students being involved, students feeling at home here at the University of Arizona, and students having the resources and the equity that they need to be the most successful that they can be. So I know that's really broad, but that encompasses a lot of different things, a lot of different departments around campus. And I think that this isn't necessarily the single issue that you think is most important.
Could you share with us what you believe your biggest issue is?
Issue, okay, yeah. So for issue, I guess I would say inclusivity, I would say, yeah.
Thank you. And Madeline?
I think, I like a philosophical question. I think the biggest issue, I think that they're not the same thing. Because as a student body president, I am the voice for all students, and every student has a different barrier or a different obstacle, or what may be the biggest issue to them may not be for another student. And as student body president, I'm supposed to listen to all those issues and be an advocate for them and help them make sure that, try to solve all of the problems that they may have and be that voice for them. I think my personal thing that I see the most is involvement. You see students all the time that through lack of involvement or not knowing about what resources for them on campus can lead them to drop out of the university. So I think that's the biggest issue that we face here on campus is retention of all students, students of color, queer, trans students of color. Like there's a lot of different demographics that we can go into. So I think that's about inclusion and building that community and making sure people are involved. But as student body president, it is my job to represent the issues that affect all students.
Thank you. And Anna, you can reply if you choose to.
I don't have a reply.
Awesome. Thank you. And our next question.
So this one is for candidate Goldstein. Your platform includes a plank advocating access to the campus listserv. If granted that access, what outreach to students on campus would kind of the use of that outreach take the form of under your leadership?
Yeah, so something I think that this listserv could do is access all students and kind of speed up that learning curve of what ASUA is and what we do as ASUA. So I think if you're getting emails, you're getting a little bit more familiarized. But I think this listserv is not to be used lightly. It's something that goes out to all students. So I think this listserv needs to be definitely inclusive of not only ASUA events, but different events happening around campus, whether that's the dean's office, cultural centers, and I think that the listserv can be used to help students get involved, and like I said, kind of shorten that learning gap of what ASUA is.
Thank you. And our next question.
All right, so we are currently having conversations with ICA about potentially rebranding ZonaZoo in response to the student athletic fee, making every student a member of the ZonaZoo, and the access to football and men's basketball is going to then be considered a premium charge, not an access pass, so to speak. And they're both priced at $135 and $175 respectively. This would give the brand to the zoo as being the largest student section in the country at about 43,000 plus students. How would you go about including every student in this process? And does it start when they receive their acceptance letters in the mail from the U of A, or do you start that process of including them once they arrive to campus?
Thank you. And Madeline.
Just to clarify, so all students would be able to go to all events, but then have an upcharge if they wanted to go to football and basketball?
Yeah, so like a little bit of elaboration is, so since you pay the student athletic fee, that gets you into everything except for men's basketball and football, so like beach volleyball, soccer, swim, dive, whatever. So kind of what we're doing is making it seem like if you pay into that student athletic fee, you are automatically a ZonaZoo member, but to go to football, to go to men's basketball, you now just pay a premium. So you are always now considered a ZonaZoo member. You just don't have access unless you pay that premium fee.
And then what was your question as far as that goes?
So when would you kind of start their inclusion into that process as being a part of like the 43,000 strong? Does it start when they get their acceptance letters at home, or do you kind of start that when they move into the dorms and they arrive to campus with that kind of welcome week rush?
I think if our goal is to get students a part of that family feel and get them incorporated to the university as soon as possible, it starts at acceptance, because a lot of students are super happy when they open that letter. And if a part of that letter says that you're automatically allowed to go to these games and you're a part of the ZonaZoo family, I think it says, and it's a huge impact for students. The reason I asked you the question is clarifying, because I think with offering that option, it creates an extra barrier. But I think that's a whole different story as far as the, like, how to go about that. But I think as far as getting them incorporated and making them feel a part of it, if as ASUA we offer ways for students who can't afford that to get involved, I think that even brings even more students in to be a part of that family. But I think as far as letting them be a part of the zoo when they first get accepted may also boost attendance at events that maybe not get that attendance in previous years.
Thank you, and Anna.
Yeah, so obviously as part of the Pac-12, we really do value athletics, but I think it might be just a little bit assumptuous if we are basically opting students in to the sporting events, I guess, right away. So correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that with a CAT card, you can currently access all other sports besides football and basketball.
Only if you pay the student fee.
Okay, so yes, right, if you pay the student fee. So I would say that it's more beneficial to just lower the price, and I would definitely think that for students that would be more of an opt-in process, and you would kind of have trouble with attendance if you were to just have every single student be a part of it, and maybe you would have trouble with students being able to access the games. So because there's so many people trying to get only a certain number of seats, that would just be an issue.
Thank you. And Madeline, if you just respond.
Yeah, I think the only response I would give is that by having it open to all students that are initially paying that charge, we run into the idea of what is that money going towards? Because we know that if every student is paying that fee, not all of those students are going to reap the benefits of paying that fee. Because we know that not all students are going to be attending all of those games. So I think it's on the backs of like ZonaZoo and ASUA and the people making those decisions of seeing like how is that money going to benefit those students that are paying it. Because every student is subject to pay that charge, but how are they all like reaping the benefits of being part of that ZonaZoo family that we talk about?
Thank you. And then our next question.
So this question is for both of you, but it's kind of tailored towards Senator Woolridge's platform. So according to the last Campus Climate Survey, 27% of students are facing food insecurity. Senator Woolridge, your platform calls for increased hours of the campus pantry. However, it's been stated by members of our pantry that it's just a Band-Aid to the solution, to the problem, not a solution. Have either of you put any thought of any other tangible initiatives that will help put an end to food insecurity for good on campus?
And Anna.
Yeah, so I think that you're right in saying that it is a Band-Aid, but we do need to be actively fundraising so that we're able to be outsourcing food and also collaborating with the student union so that we're able to get an ample amount of food at that low cost for students who are battling food insecurity. But they're battling food insecurity, assumably because of lack of funds. So we need to be helping students out financially. That's by having the financial aid office open to them and catering to them in a timely manner, because I know that's really a big issue. A lot of students wait hours and hours to receive financial aid advice. So I think the campus pantry is definitely great, really awesome thing that we have here, but we need to look further into why those students are needing to use the campus pantry and why it is such a large percentage of our campus as ASUA, and really address that root cause. So we're not just putting a Band-Aid on the issue.
Thank you. And Madeline.
I think food insecurity, from different classes that I've taken, it's not just a university issue, it's a Tucson issue. We have a lot of food insecurity in Tucson. So I think it's looking at it, how can we, as U of A, as a part of Tucson, tackle this huge burden that's facing a lot of our students. So I think that comes with bringing in the community. It's not just a U of A issue, it's a community issue. So working with organizations that are already in Tucson, trying to combat food insecurities on campus and across the city to kind of see how we can best use our resources. Is there a collaboration? Is there ways that we can, I know the eco reps, as far as Res Life goes, they're doing a fruit bag, so you can come and get a bag of produce for $5 and you can take it with you. And then looking at how we can better utilize resources, because there's a lot of students and organizations on campus that are already working towards food insecurity. So bringing all those heads to the table and really looking at how we can bring more food in and partner to make this a campus-wide effort and not just an ASUA one.
Thank you, and Anna, you can reply if you just do.
No reply.
Okay. Awesome. I was messing with the mic. I don't know what happened. So I'll just ask my question. Awesome. We are embarking on becoming a Hispanic serving institution. What opportunities do you see taking place, and how might ASUA contribute to one of them? And our first candidate to speak will be Natalie.
As far as becoming a Hispanic serving institution, I believe me, correct me if I'm wrong, Kendall, but we're already at the numbers that we need to be one.
Almost.
It's close, we're getting there.
Close.
Yeah. So I think that comes from being knowledgeable of what that brings us. We do get extra funding and grant money, is that correct?
We're eligible for additional grants.
Additional grants. So looking at how we can best use that fund for the students on our campus to be able to meet that requirement of being a Hispanic serving institution means that we have a large community here on campus that has unique issues to them. So I think the first part of that is being as ASUA president, working with different organizations and dean of students and administration to make sure that that's something that we're applying for and that we use that money wisely when awarded it to best benefit that group of students.
Thank you, and Anna.
Yeah, so I think what we need to be doing, since we're super close to those numbers, is really recruiting from the Tucson community. So I know I went to high school here in Tucson personally, and we have a very high Hispanic population, and that starts with the University of Arizona recruiting locally and being able to give those students the opportunity to get an education. And not only doing that, but understanding the unique circumstances that come with those students that are coming here, making this a Hispanic serving institution. And I think that comes with looking at tuition. So in 2008, 60% of the revenue from the University of Arizona was from tuition, and now in 2018, it's all the way up to 31%. So we really need to be looking to receive any extra funding we can get for those students. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our next question.
Okay, so, being in a leadership position isn't always answering serious questions. There is opportunity to have fun. And I know that I think Stefano is in here, and Matt received this very question last year. And I think it's important for you all to show the lighter side of yourselves. And so my final question is, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song?
I guess whoever has the answer first can go.
It'll say a lot about you.
Okay, this is actually really embarrassing. Because I think that they've heard it and it's really, really embarrassing. So actually today we had hall council retreat, and while we were making breakfast, I don't know why, I remember the words to songs very, very easily. And there's this lullaby book of children's songs. It's called Philadelphia Chickens. If you ever want to look it up, there's a lot of songs that are really good. But there's weird songs sung by different animals, and I recited it to them this morning and went through all the songs. The first song is called Cows. If you ever want to listen, this is so embarrassing. But yeah, I still listen to those songs, so it's exciting.
Thank you.
Okay, I truly don't even have one yet. I guess, I don't know, I guess Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. It's a really bad song, but it's okay. That one.
Awesome, thank you. And our next question.
All right. So for my final question, so assuming you both were elected today as ASUA president, what would be one thing, or maybe the one thing, that you would have wished you did differently in your current role?
Thank you, and Anna will go first.
Yeah, so I guess something that I would have wished to have done differently is to more actively seek opportunities where I could be involved rather than just kind of having them come to me as assignments and stuff like that. So just more actively seeking roles on university committees, things like that.
Thank you. And Natalie?
I think my role for diversity director this year, if I could go back, I would have started with a lot more structure, because as we were going through the year, we had a lot of ideas thrown at us, and we were like, that's dope, let's do this. But we didn't have that structure because we are new, very new this year. So kind of having that structure beforehand, so we could have done a lot more initiatives and reached out to a lot more groups than we did.
Thank you. And our next question.
So this is for both of you. Kind of a corollary to that, but now both of you obviously cannot win. So just hypothetically, let's say you don't. How will you still go about advocating for your issues in your platform, or what you feel is your most important issue, and keeping that issue in front of both ASUA and the student body at large?
Thank you. And Madeline will go first.
I think one of the reasons why I wanted to run for president is because I'm passionate about all the things that I do. So if it does happen that I am not elected, I'm continuing the work that I've been doing since I've first stepped on campus. Nothing really changes from my end of it. It's just the role that would be along with my title. Still being involved with diversity efforts, cultural centers, and making sure that those conversations are still being had whether or not I'm in office or not.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, so if not elected, I think something that I would do is seek other roles in ASUA and see where I can use my skills and my connections that I've made thus far in ASUA to accomplish my platforms and to still help make students' voices heard.
Thank you. And then our next question.
All right. So coming back like full circle, Matt and I still have 2 months to kind of negotiate the ZonaZoo pass. So if we are successful in getting the ZonaZoo asking price dropped in regards to the student fee and everything, what more will you continue to do in regards to the ZonaZoo?
Thank you. And Anna will go first.
Yeah, so hopefully that you're able to get that price lowered. I would say that in order to actively continue to promote the ZonaZoo, something that would need to be improved upon and kind of bounced back from is the lack of sales this year, assumably due to the athletic fee, and kind of really make that known to freshmen that are coming to orientation, transfer students that are coming in, and also students that might not have already had a ZonaZoo pass, and letting them know what the Wildcat spirit is really about and how they can partake in it for a reasonable price.
Thank you. And Madeline?
Yeah, I think it's a part, touching on what Anna said. So one is being a part of those conversations with the price, but then also looking at, you talked about just rebranding of the ZonaZoo in general. So using the connections through diversity to reach out and how we can better brainstorm about what does that student experience look like when a student first steps on campus, and how we can make them feel a part of the athletic spirit even if they're not at the games. And being a part of that brainstorming team to make sure that the ZonaZoo is something that all students are a part of.
Thank you. And we will have our final question be asked by our current ASUA student body president.
A lot of pressure here, so hopefully this is a good final question. So in this role, you will not only be dealing with students, you'll be dealing with state legislators, the Board of Regents, administrators, and the Board of Trustees for the University of Arizona. While dealing with this group, so you may be the youngest person in the room by far. So how will you be able to effectively communicate student issues to older populations who may have not experienced the same issues when they had their time in school?
Thank you. And Madeline?
I think that just goes a part of having that those conversations and building that relationship with them, and letting them know that you were elected to this position for a reason, and there's a reason why you have a seat at the table, because you have valuable information to bring. And I think for individuals that may not see what the students go through on a daily basis, as president, I'd invite them. I was like, come with me, come join me. See it for yourself, because these are actual problems that students face. And these issues that you're deciding in these rooms have a massive impact on the students' experience here. And I think a lot of people say, they call me a grandma, so I guess I'm kind of old anyway. But being able to relate and talk with them and kind of bring it down to their level. They might not have everything in common with what students are going through right now, but there's probably something that we can have common ground about.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it starts with not being afraid to speak up when you are the diverging opinion in the room, because that's your job as a student body president. And I also think the power of a story is not to be underestimated. So I think if you are really doing your footwork and going out and talking to students that these topics that you're going to be discussing are affecting, and if you're able to share an example of their story, it can make it a lot more relatable for those people who might not be able to relate to it with how their past was, so that they are able to understand that these are real students, that these students are really going through these real issues, and what you are discussing at the table is really going to affect them in their lives here at the university.
So thank you to you both, and let's give a round of applause to both our ASUA Student Body President candidates.
Thank y'all. Okay, cool.
You guys can step off stage now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlon.
So I'd like to thank everyone for all participants and audience members who decided to come out and listen to the future of ASUA. Students will be able to vote for all candidates in the general election on Tuesday, February 27th, starting at 8 a.m., and it will conclude Wednesday, February 28th at 8 p.m. Voting takes place online at the ASUA elections website. The results of the general election will be announced on Thursday, March 1st at 6 p.m. on UATV, and it will be posted on the ASUA elections website and also on the Daily Wildcat. So thank you for participating. Thank you for spending your Sunday night with us. I know most of us would be in the library, but thank you all for coming.
You know, because you can say,